The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, glad you could join us. My name is Ricardo and I am the Public Lands Organizer with the Ohio Environmental Council. The goal of today is to make you aware of a few public lands issues and empower you to share your voice and opinions through advocacy. After all, these are public lands that belong to you and you can help protect them. We'll be talking today about some of the different public lands issues going on in Ohio and across the country. These will include the AEP recreation lands, Hocking State Forest, oil and gas drilling, and the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. After this, we will be discussing our current strategies and how you can help by writing letters to the editor, including tips on how to write one. So let's talk a little bit about the OEC. Many of you have been involved for a long period of time, but some of you may be newer to the organization. For a little bit of background, the OEC was started in 1969 as the Ohio Conservation Association, which was then changed in 1970 to the Ohio Environmental Council. Since then, the OEC has grown to an organization of 26 staffers and more than 3,000 individual members and over 100 group members. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without your help, and for that, we are very grateful. We also hold the state's only nonprofit environmental law center, and through this and our staff members, we help keep decision makers at all levels of government accountable. OEC's mission is up on the screen. We want to secure healthy air, land, and water for all who call Ohio home. We have three distinct sections of the organization working on clean energy, natural resources, and the law center, which help achieve this goal. For the OEC, protection of public lands is a priority. We want to see healthy lands in Ohio and beyond. They need to be managed properly and responsibly, keeping the interests of Ohioans above the interests of small groups of people or corporations. Let's get moving on talking about our public lands. This is going to be a non-exhaustive summary of some of the different types of public lands and issues. Rest assured that there is much more to this subject. So what are public lands? As you know, public lands come in different shapes and sizes. For example, you can have local parks such as city parks or metro parks. You can have state parks, state forests, state nature preserves, wildlife areas. You can have national monuments, national parks, national forests, and even right-of-ways would be considered public land. Now, these public lands are important to us for a variety of reasons, one of them being health issues that come up from lack of access to them. Right? Good parks are the places people go to get healthy and stay fit. Parks and recreation programs and services contribute to the health of children, youth, adults, and seniors. And there's a lot of different health studies that have shown positive correlations between access to public lands and exercise and a higher degree of health. Parks and protected public lands are proven to improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide habitat for wildlife, and they also provide a place for children and families to connect with nature and recreate outdoors together. So some of the differences between these public lands comes down to the managing agencies. Right? This can have several implications. For example, they might have different priorities as far as how they manage their land. For example, if you live in the Columbus area, you might be familiar with the Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks. Their mission is to conserve open spaces while providing places and opportunities that encourage people to discover and experience nature. If then you take a look at the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry, their mission includes sustainable timber production, wildlife habitat, soil and water protection, and recreation. Then when you take a look at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, they are tasked with protecting wildlife, wilderness, and recreational values, as well as conserving natural diversity and providing opportunities for subsistence uses. Another area that these public lands differ in is their funding source. Some might be taxes, others might be license sales, and even others might be levies. So having so many different types of managing priorities and funding sources can cause some confusion about our public lands and their uses. We're going to go through those 4 examples at the state and national levels that can show some of these issues. So let's start with state lands, specifically the AEP recreation lands. So this is an issue that has gotten a lot of attention in the hunting and angling communities here in Ohio. AEP has been working on 60,000 acres of land that were once used as strip mines for the rich coal deposits. This area has been managed, planting over 63 million trees, establishing 350 lakes and ponds stocked for fishing. They also allow hunting. They have 380 campsites, as well as hiking, mountain bike, and equine trails. For the last 50 years or so, these lands have been free for the public to go and use, although they do require a permit. Essentially, there are 60,000 acres that have been managed for wildlife and public use. So the issue that's been going on for the last couple of years is that they're for sale. Now, AEP has been hoping that the state would purchase these lands. Just a few weeks ago, AEP and the state came out and said that the state was going to start purchasing what they called a major part of this land, starting with 7,000 acres and then moving forward from that. If they were to purchase this entire area, this would be 3 times larger than the largest Ohio State Park, which is Salt Fork, and 25 times larger than Hocking Hills State Park. It'd be around the same size as Shawnee State Forest and over twice the size of Zaleski State Forest. Acquisition of all of these 60,000 acres would be around a 10% increase in state-owned land in Ohio. If the state doesn't acquire this land, it could be leased or sold to other groups that could instead use this for coal mining or private hunting. So in order to preserve this land for hunting, fishing, and hiking, it really does need to go to the state. Another state lands issue is Hocking State Forest. Hocking State Forest is a conglomeration of parcels adjacent and near to the Hocking Hill State Park. It's also managed by ODNR, but instead of state parks, it's the Division of Forestry. And it totals just shy of 10,000 acres in Hocking County. So some of the very best and most picturesque public land in Ohio is found in Hocking State Forest. If you're familiar with the region, you'll know that outdoor recreation and tourism are economic powerhouses. Hocking County lodging tax receipts exceeded $2 million for the first time in the history of Hocking County's tourism industry. To put it in a little bit of perspective, Hocking County gets more recreational visitors per year than Yellowstone National Park. Just this past year in 2016, there was an estimated 4 million plus visitors. Now, what's going on here is that currently there's a lot of even-aged and clear-cut logging in Hocking State Forest. We believe that forest management priorities in the forest should shift away from logging to better facilitating outdoor recreation and aesthetic values. One area in particular is the Spruce Run watershed, where Denton Hollow is located. This is an area of the forest that is particularly impressive. There are sandstone outcroppings, caves, and other beautiful areas hidden away in the forest. And this particular location is one of several parcels slated to be logged. The Department of Forestry, to their credit, has been doing environmental surveys of the area to make sure that their plans to log it make sense and that they're not destroying any vital habitat to specific species. But we need public engagement on these areas to ensure that they are protected. On a broader scale in Ohio, there is an issue with oil and gas drilling. To give a little bit of background, back in 2011, the General Assembly created a new centralized leasing system, which opened state parks to leasing for the first time, except nature preserves. This commission consists of 5 people, 4 of which are appointed by the governor. Governor Kasich has not appointed anyone to this commission, preventing the leasing of state lands from moving forward. If you skip forward to this most recent budget bill, there was a leasing commission amendment introduced that would wrestle commission member appointment authority away from the governor and give it to the House Speaker and Senate President. Note, this isn't to the entire House or to the entire Senate, but rather just those 2 individuals in leadership. The Senate declined to include it in their budget proposal, but then it was reintroduced before making it into the final bill. Kasich vetoed the amendment, which was then overridden by the House, and now the option to override that veto rests in the Ohio Senate, which technically has until December 2018 to make a decision. If the veto is overridden by the Senate, it puts all state lands in the shale region in the crosshairs. Foremost among them probably being Salt Fork State Park, Ohio's largest state park at around 20,000 acres. So bear in mind that a functioning oil and gas leasing commission also means smaller conventional or vertical operations could start popping up in state parks and lands anywhere around the state, which essentially puts everything at risk. It doesn't have to just be in the shale zone. Switching over to federal lands, we will be talking a little bit about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. This is about 19.6 million acre wildlife refuge that's located in northeast Alaska. Part of this includes the 1.5 million acre coastal plain region, which is considered to be the biological heart of the refuge. For example, the porcupine caribou herd with approximately 180,000 caribou calves in this region. This also includes the United States' most important polar bear denning habitat, and if you don't know, polar bears are considered threatened under the Endangered Species Act. There's also hundreds of species of migratory birds from all the lower 48 states that are found here. This has musk oxen and a lot of cultural history. For example, the Gwich'in people have depended on the caribou for their subsistence economy and cultural identity for thousands of years. Now, President Trump's budget proposal included language to open the coastal plains area up to oil and gas drilling. A few things to note on this is that Alaska would likely receive 90% of any government revenue. Drilling would require hundreds of miles of pipelines, dozens of well pads, and other infrastructure. And there still isn't a good way to clean oil spills off of ice. Now, this is relevant very much so to Ohio because the Arctic Refuge has been the center of dozens of legislative attempts to protect fully and conversely open up to drilling, becoming a political football being tossed around by both sides over the past several decades. At this point, it is being targeted at the federal level through the budget bill process, first being targeted by President Trump in his budget proposal and now being targeted by the House. It is important to note that since it is part of the budget process, it would only need a 51 vote majority in the Senate instead of the typical 60, and it would be filibuster proof. Now, any legislation at the federal level would go through the Senate. Currently, Senator Sherrod Brown is a champion of the Arctic Refuge, but Senator Portman is yet uncommitted to protecting the Arctic. So Senator Portman is a swing vote on the issue, and as such, it is important for us Ohioans to make sure that he knows where we stand on the issue. Something to keep in mind is that if we allow oil corporations to come into the most pristine wild landscape that is left in the United States, what's going to stop them from coming to other areas that aren't as pristine? So we'd be setting a dangerous precedent. But there are several ways to help in this area.
Hello, my name is David Miller, and I am the Deputy Communications Director here at the Ohio Environmental Council. I want to take a moment to outline some opportunities for folks to help in securing protection over our public lands in Ohio and across the nation. So one thing that you can do to help is by interacting with and sharing social media posts that the OEC puts out. This helps spread the message about the different issues that are going on, and we use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I would like to have everyone take a moment to read through those posts and share and like, and make sure that your friends see these opportunities to interact with the OEC and share the message. We also have a robust blog system that you can check out and read through, and we often have folks writing blogs about public land issues. But one way for you to directly help out is through writing a letter to the editor to your local newspaper. And letters to the editor are reviewed and read by your elected officials, whether it's your state elected officials, your local people, or the people who are in Congress and the Senate. If you live in Cincinnati, and it's Senator Portman's hometown, I know that he is very avid to reading those letters to the editors and op-eds in the Cincinnati Enquirer. So it would behoove you to share your views to the wider audience, and in turn share your views with Senator Portman. I'm just going to take a few seconds to talk over strategies for writing letters to the editor. The most important thing is to keep it local. If you're living in Toledo, if you're living in Cincinnati, you need to write to your local newspaper, whether that's the Toledo Blade or Cincinnati Enquirer. For folks in Columbus, that's the Columbus Dispatch. There are many different ways for you to write a letter to the editor. A majority of the reasons are currently on the screen at the moment. And these reasons are, supporting or opposing a stance taken by the publication in an editorial, responding to another writer's letter to the editor. These are often utilized. Commenting on a current issue being debated by a governing body. So, for example, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge would be a good example to write Senator Portman and demand his support of this topic. Another reason would be remarking on a news story that has appeared in a previous edition of the paper, or writing into correct or perceived error or misrepresentation. And so these are some good reasons. These are typically the reasons that people write letters to the editor. And so when you're sitting down to write your letter, it's always important to consider, only talking about one or 2 points. So these letters are typically fairly short, about 150 to 200 words is the sweet spot. Most newspapers don't accept anything longer than 300 words. So really take on this. If you're writing about the AUP recreational lands, you're going to want to talk about one point of why that's important, maybe another point of why we should protect it, and then close up that letter. So 150 words, 200 words is kind of where you really want to be. And don't go off into a couple different tangents, but really focus in on what you want to say to make sure that you have a complete message to share. And as I said before, the location is essential and critical. People in your elected leaders in Toledo are not going to really care that much about someone from Cincinnati writing in about a local issue or a topic, because it's important for the local elected officials and the local newspaper and people in the area to really get a feel for what your view is. So location is critical for where you send your letters. All the newspapers across the state have a page on their website for letters to the editor. And oftentimes in the right or left side or up at the top, there's a clickable option to submit a letter to the editor. And these newspapers will accept submissions online, or you can also fax them or mail them in, although that's less utilized by people across the state. But yeah, check your local newspaper and go to the letters to the editor and read what other people have been writing and kind of get a feel for what the newspaper likes to publish, and go through and submit. Now, the one thing about letters to the editor, if you send one in, it's not guaranteed to get published, unfortunately. You spend all that time honing the letter, getting all mad and upset, or supportive of the topic, of course, but you write that letter and you send it in, and they may not publish it. And that happens a lot. But it's important to give that newspaper the opportunity to publish your view. Make sure that you have the opportunity to let your elected official know how you feel. So if you have any questions about letters to the editor, or if you would like Ricardo or I to take a look at them before you send it in, and if you help edit during the editing process, we are glad to do that. We are eager and excited to help you share your message, share your viewpoint, and ensure that your elected officials, know what you care about and what you're passionate about. So, letters to the editor are a bastion of our democracy, and it's an opportunity to really share your opinions and share your views. And I'm very hopeful that some of you will take the opportunity to do so. Ricardo, I'm turning it back over to you.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for taking a listen to what we had to say today. This is something that is really important to Ohio, and being able to share your voice is equally as important. So if you have any questions about the policy or letters to the editor, how to write them, if you would like us to review them to make sure that you're getting your facts straight, or just the wording is the best it can be, like David said, feel free to send us an email or get in contact with us in some way. So thanks again for spending a little bit of time with us, and we hope to be in contact with you soon. Thanks.